They've been dealing with more than a decade of war, and the challenges just keep coming. Afghans this year face a struggling economy, dwindling aid money, and the upcoming withdrawal of all international combat forces, not to mention the continued threat of Taliban insurgents.
In April, voters will usher in the first government since the U.S. overthrow of the Taliban without Hamid Karzai as president. But power rivalries and lawlessness could make the election far from free and fair. On assignments, Philip Alexiou talked with VOA's Sharon Behn about what Afghans are facing.
Sharon Behn, the elections in Afghanistan will be in April 2014. What are the elections going to be like? They're talking about wanting these elections to be fair elections. Is that going to happen?
I think that's really doubtful. Given how the country is right now, and given the security situation in large areas of the country where the militants are still in control, where people are being threatened, most people are saying this is not going to be one of those really purely free and fair elections and a fine example of democracy. That's not what's going to happen. The question is, will it be an election that's credible enough for the Afghan people to accept?
And so, since Karzai is not running again and he can't, and yet you're saying that he would like to have some sort of influence on the next person who ends up being elected, how much of an influence can he have on the election?
Well, that's a very good question. He actually, the president is very powerful in Afghanistan. They nominate everybody all the way down to the ground level. Basically, he has power and influence over everybody who's nominated in every kind of government position. But as far as his influence over the election, again, it's all kind of it's a little bit fuzzy. I don't think that having his backing is going to help any current candidate more or less than if they didn't have his backing. Karzai is not liked by everybody. He has a very tempestuous relationship with many of the powerful leaders, including some of the warlords. So it all depends on what the other candidates do and what they promise, and it depends who votes. You have the large urban centers, or that's what's expected to really sway the vote. The people who can vote in the large urban centers, that's where most of the population is now. So it depends how they sway the vote.
The Loya Jirga is not the parliament. So, but we hear so much about the Loya Jirga,
right.
But it's the parliament that has to maybe take those wishes and stamp them yes or no,
right.
Vote on them, and then the president, I guess, accepts them. Explain that little trifecta there.
I thought it was a really interesting thing, the Loya Jirga. It comes from a sort of more historical, cultural, social, tribal way of making decisions.
They no longer meet in a tent. But in Afghanistan, the gathering of tribal elders to consult on major decisions is a tradition with deep historical roots.
In Europe and the United States, reaching out to the public for their opinion is called a referendum. In Afghanistan, we have a tribal system, so we use the Loya Jirga as a form of referendum. This is our tradition.
And then whatever decision they make would go to Parliament for a vote. But it would be very difficult. They can do it. They can vote against what the Loya Jirga decided, but culturally it's not really acceptable.
Now, you spent a lot of time abroad. You've been in Afghanistan, you've been in Kabul. Give us an idea of what it's like.
Yeah, Kabul is a city in a sort of a saucer. It's surrounded by hills. And right now it has armed checkpoints everywhere. And there are big bases right in the middle of ISAF, NATO bases right in the middle of the city. So it's high walls, barbed wire. Every house has high walls, barbed wire, armed guards, checkpoints everywhere. But you can navigate it. You can drive around during the day. I drive around the day. I've driven around at night. And it's been okay. But you have to be a little bit careful. You don't. I sort of dress down and I'm very quiet when I'm out in the street. You don't announce the fact that you're out, trying to be a journalist.
Well, do you have to go with any kind of security?
I don't. I don't go with any security. I work closely with VOA's bureau there, and no, I have an absolutely normal car, regular driver. We drive around. We'll stop in a market. We'll film in a market. I go with the cameraman. We'll film in a market. We'll do our interviews, and I've never had any problem. Having said that, recently, from when I first started going there a year and a half ago, it's definitely a little bit more tense. What people are telling me is that the Taliban are coming in from the countryside a little bit closer to the city. So it's a little bit more tense than it used to be. And during the Loya Jirga, which was the meeting of the tribal elders, it was quite tense.
Right.
There was a lot of nervousness that the Taliban was very close. So that, you know, everybody actually came down quite a bit, and the security was intense during that time.
That was VOA correspondent Sharon Behn. Making the situation even more complicated, the New York Times reports President Karzai has engaged in secret contacts with the Taliban about a peace agreement. Without his Western allies, the Taliban denies the claim.